Everything's figure outable if you have the resiliency to learn things and to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. It's all a mindset, I think, because you have to be okay with uncertainty. And
Right.
that's been something I've been actively working on for the last three years.
Few things connect people faster than food. For me, it's the stories of the people behind the food that hit deepest. Their family legacies, how they made it through the tough times, and how they celebrate the good times. I am Ryan Armstrong, and this podcast will give you a face behind your food. It uncovers the honest and proud stories of the fascinating yet little-known sectors of the agriculture industry. Welcome to Farmstrong. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today, wherever you're checking this podcast out at. But today we have the wizard behind the scenes, my manager, as I like to call her, Kasey Brown, Teal Hat Communications creator, developer, everything under the sun. So thank you for taking the time to be a part of the podcast that you produce.
Well, thanks for letting me be on this side of the mic, Ryan. I'm excited to get to chat and share my ag experience.
Yep. So let's just jump right into it like we always do. So what do you have going on? Where are you at? What are you doing? Kind of give us a rundown of all the different irons you have in the fire.
Yeah, perfect. So like you mentioned, I'm the owner of Teal Hat Communications, which is an ag copywriting and podcast production company. I started that late last year, so November of 2024. And so it's really cool getting to own my own business, but that also means I wear all the hats. So the learning curve is steep at times, but it's really cool to be able to have the flexibility of that because I have two children. Jackson is 9 and Mary is 5. So getting to own my own company means I have the flexibility to be fully present with them, which is the ideal situation for me. We live in St. Joseph, Missouri, so we're just north of Kansas City. And married, my husband is a maintenance manager at Sealed Air. We have about 20 acres, so eventually we'll like to build some fences, get some cattle, potentially goats, depending on the type of fences we build. But yeah, so we've got lots of irons in the fire, but I also like to be involved in our community theater in town, and I sing every Sunday at our church. So I like to mix ag and music whenever possible.
So how did you grow up in Missouri? Are you from there? Kind of how did you get
No,
there?
so I grew up on a livestock operation in Indiana. Indiana is definitely corn and soybean land. Crops get top billing in Indiana agriculture. And I grew up maybe 40 minutes south of Purdue. So Purdue is a great ag school, but I was just ready for something different. So I didn't want like high school plus to be my college experience because a lot of people from high school went to Purdue. Most of the people from FFA went there. So I was just ready for something new. So I went 17 hours away to Texas A&M. I studied ag journalism and loved it. Central Texas is beautiful. Ended up meeting a Texan who was willing to leave Texas, and that is very rare.
I was about to say, that's right.
Luckily, Jared grew up on the road. His family, they're vendors at stock shows and rodeos. So he grew up kind of everywhere. And so I wouldn't call him a typical Texan, if that makes sense. So I went to school at A&M for ag communications. I stayed for my master's there because I wasn't burnt out on school yet. Oddly enough, journalism is kind of like being paid to be a student, which is pretty great. I love learning about most things. But I got the job right out of grad school. I got hired at the Angus Journal. And so that was basically my dream job. When I switched into ag com at 19, I was like, I want to be a managing editor of a beef breed association because I grew up with my dad reading the Register, Sim Talk, Shorthorn Country, the breed association publications of the breeds that we had. So we had Simmentals and Shorthorns. And I just remember always seeing those around. I remember seeing him reading those. And I just realized like, that's what I want to do. I want to provide information to keep cattlemen in business. And so I got hired at Angus. And so that made me move to St. Joe, Missouri. And even though I'm not at Angus anymore, we still live in Missouri. And the funny thing is, so we came to Missouri for my job. Now, owning my company, I can work from anywhere. And we're staying in Missouri for Jared's job. So that's kind of funny. But because he's maintenance, he can't work remotely, Weird. He can't fix things from from the house. But yeah, so we've been here now for 14 years. And yeah, it's great. I love being in cattle country. We've got all these beautiful hills. We live not far from the Missouri River. And yeah, the ag here is really beautiful and I love it.
Okay. So since you guys are new to the SEC at Texas A&M, is it or is it not a cult football following?
A&M is already a cult, so
Okay.
I
All
feel
right.
like we fit in very nicely.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, I have loved it. So we moved to the SEC shortly, right around the time I moved to Missouri. So that amount of change was like all at the same time. It was really great because we were finally able to get out from the shadow of Texas football. That is our insane rivalry. And it was really nice to kind of get out from Texas's thumb because they kind of controlled the Big 12. And so it was really, really great. And I loved that when we joined the SEC, we had a really strong football program. That's when we had Johnny football. So I feel like there was a lot of talk of A&M can't hang in the SEC. And then when we joined it, we did pretty well. Then we had some rough years and now we're doing pretty darn well. We have never been ranked so high in my entire life. And it's really cool. I know that our football team does not affect the quality of my education, but it is really fun to be an Aggie fan right now because we're doing pretty well. I like
I
Mike
mean,
Elko. He's pretty great.
in the SEC, you could definitely make the argument that football is directly correlated to education quality.
Right. True. We like to call that the other education at A&M of like life. And yeah, definitely other education is strong at A&M.
What is the practice called that they do the night before? Is it yell
Ooh,
practice?
yeah, it's called midnight yell practice. And
Yell.
so you still get like 10,000 people who show up at this.
Yeah.
But you practice all the yells. So when you do a yell, and I love this having only getting to like watch A&M football now because I
Mhm.
haven't been to College Station in about 10 years. So you have to bend over so the acoustics make it even louder. And so we've got basically choreographed yells that we all yell together. And so when you get
Mhm.
100,000 people who are yelling this, it's pretty darn intimidating.
Yeah, sure.
You can hear most of the yells on the TV, which is pretty great. But like I said, we're a cult and I've fully drank the Kool-Aid and I am on board.
Yeah, I saw something last night. I think it was a short or a clip or something, but they were talking about how Mike Elko's doing, how he's doing there, and how
Mhm.
like Johnny Football comes back, and they were talking about like President Bush is riding around on a golf cart at practice and stuff, and they were talking about like how
Yeah.
it's just like this whole different dynamic of oil money and
Mhm. Yeah.
like power conglomerates that come together, and it's working really well. So
Yeah.
you
I
know,
will say when I was at A&M, so my sister and I call him Daddy Bush. So George Bush Sr.,
Mhm.
so his presidential library is on campus. So it's next to the business school.
Okay.
And so it's really cool that you do see President Bush sometimes on campus. So I was in the choir when I was at school, and he came to several of our concerts. It was amazing. I do remember one of my favorite memories of those. George Bush and Barbara were both in attendance at one of our concerts, and Barbara Bush had this cute little pink point and shoot digital camera, and
Uh,
she would sneak photos when she thought no one was looking.
That's funny.
And it was adorable because
That-
she wouldn't put it up to her eye. She'd like pull it up here and take a picture and then put it back down. And
Yeah.
it was so sweet. You just got this energy that she was making eye contact with everyone there. When you're singing, you obviously get to see the
Mhm.
audience. And we made eye contact once and she smiled. And I was like, I feel like we just connected. And I got to connect with the first lady. And that was amazing. So A&M, you get to meet some really cool people. It's a very interesting dynamic. It's a really large school, but it didn't feel large, except at football games when you want it to be big and intimidating. But one of the key components of the culture of A&M is howdy, and so you basically can say howdy to anyone, any stranger, and it's just normal to say howdy back. And so it like
Mm.
opens up the options for communication and conversations immediately. And it's just part of the culture. And then we also have our Aggie rings, which is another way to find other Aggies. And it's also very normal to introduce yourself and say like, hi, I'm Kasey Brown. I'm class of 10. And then they can answer and they can be like, hi, I'm class 85. And so it automatically gives you something in common. And so when I had an internship in Washington, D.C., and apparently D.C. is the second most concentrated area of Aggies after College Station. And
Really?
so the cool thing was, like, I'm there for an internship. I'm 21 after my junior year of college, and I worked for the National Association of State Departments of Ag. So I got to attend meetings on the Hill. I got to do all sorts of cool things. And then, I mean, just being on the Hill, being anywhere you see a ring and you can just go up and say, hi, I'm Kasey Brown, I'm class of 10. And it just starts a conversation and you take it from there. But it's just that like beautiful opening that everyone automatically has as an
Right.
Aggie that I have really appreciated. And it's pretty cool.
It's really cool. So what made you want to, dive off the proverbial deep end into being your own boss?
That's a great question. So let me back up just a little bit. So I left Angus in 2022 because I was very fortunate in that I got to be part-time when my kids were born. So I was still managing the content for our digital publications. I was running our podcast that we created from scratch and still being part of all the print publications and all of that. And so I'd been part-time for several years, but realized like I was doing full-time work. And so I was ready for full-time benefits that come with that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in the budget. And so I get that. The hard part of member organizations is that budgets are tight. You don't want to waste money that members are paying. So totally get that. That kind of started my side freelance gig at that point. Cause I was like, you know what? It works for our family right now that we need full-time income. And so I started Teal Hat at that point. So my husband gave me this teal cowboy hat for Christmas in 2019. Teal is my favorite color and it's a highwayman style. It just looks a little different than most cowboy hats, but it is like this bright, beautiful teal. And so when I was at Angus, we'd go to a cattle industry convention. And if I was scheduling podcast interviews or anything for the journalism side of things, I would be like, hey, just meet me at the Angus booth, look for the lady in the teal hat. And so I realized had kind of become my own branding of I'm the lady in the teal hat. And so that's how I decided I wanted how to name my business.
Right.
Also, because KB Communications was already taken when I was looking at URLs.
Funny how all that stuff falls into place.
Right. And so that started Teal Hat. I was able to get a full-time job with an ag marketing agency, and I fell in love with it. That was a kind of lightning in a bottle experience. Just the right people, the right clients, the right situation. I just loved that whole experience. That's how I met Tiana. So your first episode, go check out Tiana's episode, listeners. We worked at Filament together, but then we got acquired by a bigger agency and it was great. There were wonderful people who worked there, but the culture was definitely different. It was more an agency with ag clients instead of an ag agency. And that definitely is a big distinction. And so I was just getting progressively unhappier while I worked there. But the fun thing was that I had still been producing podcasts on the side, even while I was working at the agencies. And so I don't know why or when, I'm sure it was a God thing. I was editing one episode one night in probably like September and realized, you know what? I am making 3 times more money per hour doing this than I am at the agency that I am unhappy with right now. And that made me think of like, I can lean into my skill set. I can help other people. Then I would get the freedom to do that. So that's what made me really start rebranding Teal Hat, started making my website. So that was a learning curve.
I can imagine.
But I really started building it with the intent of, I want to make this my full-time gig. I want to make this work. And then they also agreed because I was part of a very large layoff. But the beautiful thing was I was already ready for it, really. I had been building this with the safety net of the full-time job. And I was telling myself that, like, if I find maybe 2 more clients, then I'll quit. I definitely needed that kick in the pants to be like, okay, it's time to bet on yourself. It is time to do this. And it worked out because 5 days after the layoff, I ended up getting a 6-month client contract
Oh,
that
cool.
it totally gave me the stability that I needed as I kept building things. It was a client I'd worked with at Filament, so I already knew their messaging, their products, the client contact. We already had a really great working relationship. And so it was, again, total God thing of the timing came at the right time, helped with the building. And so, yeah, it was really, really great. And I have really enjoyed entrepreneurship. Like I said, the learning curve is steep. There's a lot of hats you have to wear as a business owner. Accounting is not my favorite. I get that, but that's okay. And I've realized that everything is figure outable.
Hmm.
That's the beauty of the internet, YouTube, Reddit. You can learn all sorts of
AI.
stuff. AI, yeah. Really, I used AI to troubleshoot a tech issue and it worked. It was great. And it saved me so much time. And like, I would have Googled all of it, but it compiled things for me and it ended up working. And I didn't have to replace my laptop, which I was really worried I'd have to do. I mean, everything's figure outable if you have the resiliency to learn things and be willing to get out of your comfort zone. And the world is your oyster kind of deal. It's all a mindset, I think, because you have to be okay with uncertainty. And
Right.
that's been something I've been actively working on for the last three years.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, and I've noticed this with the podcast and us working on it, is you kind of just have to be on all the time. Like you can't, and that might sound really cliche, but I think what I'm trying to say is things are going to come to you, like not when you're at 10:30 when you have time to do like it's you're going to have a pen and a paper or write it down on your phone or that's
Mhm.
the thing that I've noticed the most is like whenever it comes to you like you better write it down or put it somewhere or make a note because you will forget about it and
Right.
it's definitely been a big learning curve. There's a lot of
Mm.
sitting up in bed in the middle of the night writing stuff down because the idea came to me and it's I don't know. It's very different in that sense. So hearing you say
Right.
talk about that, it makes me think of an old saying that I've always heard, which is things that you're destined to do or your calling or your gift is. It's often whispers. It doesn't scream at you. Do you kind of feel like that's how that like it's kind of like
Yeah.
over here. It's like not really. It's not yelling. It's not loud. It's not something that
Mhm.
you would go, oh, I'm gonna do that. 5 years ago, if you told that person 5 years ago that you would be doing what you are now, you wouldn't believe it. Do you think that's kind of how it was?
Oh, absolutely. So let's say 4 years ago is when we got the very vague directive of we have to start a podcast at Angus. None of us knew anything about podcasts. I didn't even like listening to them at that point. So if you told me 5 years ago that I would be a podcast producer, I would have laughed in your face. But I think I've been working so diligently. I don't know. I'm really have been working on being able to be quiet and listen to my intuition, listen to those signs, those feelings. I kind of feel like your intuition is a God-given gift of,
Mhm.
hey, if you slow down and listen, it will it will guide you. Don't always listen to the noise that comes from the rest of the world. If you slow down, pay attention inward, you'll like I get gut feelings if that makes sense, and if I
Yep.
actually slow down to listen to them, that's probably been the instances of my biggest success is when I actually pay attention to them. You're right, they're not shouts, they're whispers, and you have to be quiet to be able to hear them or to feel them. But that's been a really big thing I've been learning, and it's really exciting because it's kind of like all of this is already here, and if you just learn to listen to it, figure it out, it's not going to be perfect, but as long as you're willing to take that next step,
Mhm.
really cool things are available and possible, and that's been pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. It makes me a thing that Chris Williams always brings up. I always go back to the clip of it is, like if you're going to be memorable or extraordinary, like by definition, you're not going to be normal. And if you do what everybody else is doing, you're just conforming to what they are. All the people that you hear about or you know of or that are celebrated, they're all people that like you can look through history. Everybody that they said they were crazy, Leonardo da Vinci, all of these
Mm.
people, you have to take perspective. And I think side note, I think we have a really good tool now. Like you can go back and watch YouTube videos from 10 years ago, and that can be like really eye opening to hear people talk
Mhm.
about how they're what the perspective was or what the news feed was at the time compared to like how it actually turned out on the other side of that. I think that's really powerful.
So that brings up a question for me is I would love to hear because we've talked about this, but I think
Mhm.
your listeners would love to hear like what was that step that you heard or maybe that whisper of like, you know what, a podcast is what I want to do. I think this is the right next step. Tell us a little bit more about that. Also, sorry, I'm a journalist. I ask a lot of questions too. Sorry.
No, I love it. Yeah, yeah, it's good. It's totally good. I'll talk. You might have to tell me to shut up at some point. So, side note, this is something that Kasey and I have been working on. I have a lot of texts to myself and notes and things that I've got to round up and send to her for an episode that is going to dive really deep into the question that she just asked. But so to give like an authentic answer, I started working for Tropicana in 2013. I went from Gainesville, Brooksville, kind of the north central Florida area, to living in downtown Fort Myers because it was the only place that was available that I could find. And my office was in LaBelle, which is arguably kind of like the north part of the Everglades, kind of where it starts. But it is everything that you hear about it. It's vast, it's wild, it's untamed. The people are very similar in that sense, but they're great people. So the point I'm getting at is there's a lot of time alone, and I covered a very large area. I would drive average, I would say 65,000 miles a year. Sometimes it was
Wow.
more, sometimes it was very rarely it was less. So there's a lot of windshield time. And at that time, Joe Rogan was really starting to become popular, and I was a big Jordan Peterson fanatic. Just spent a lot of time in my car, had my phone in my truck and would just play them. And then kind of what developed was like these were the people that I was genuinely spending all of my time with. So I had that job for 6 years. So you can imagine all of that window time over those years. I kind of didn't realize it at the time, but you are what you consume. So kind of by default, you learn how to speak, you learn how to be very articulate, you learn how to ask questions, you learn how to ask the right questions or think about things differently when you're having conversations with people. And during that time, I actually joined Farm Bureau and joined the YF&R program. And the reason I bring that up is because up to that point, I was absolutely terrified of talking on camera, terrified of talking in front of people and doing any public speaking. And what ended up happening is I ended up becoming the class president of the YF&R program, leadership program for the state, which means you're talking in front of hundreds of people. You're in board meetings. Like you went from it became the complete opposite of everything that I was doing before and everything that I was afraid of. So kind of by this divine intervention, I guess you could say, I got thrown into situations where I was either going to fumble my words and not look good or lean into who I am, which is being a successful person who wants to always win and figure it out. So thanks to having a support group and people around me that pushed me to do that. Kind of fast forward to now, having the job that I have now, being able to work with farmers a lot more closely, but in a different way. Because a lot of that happened in the job with Tropicana. Like it was a lot of one-on-one, a lot of very personal. Because
Right.
at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like it, but when you go grab a bottle of orange juice, there's a very, very large amount of work that goes into it before that. And there are
Mhm.
families and there are legacies and there are generations of family that have built that to be able
Mhm.
for you to grab that orange juice. And there are children, there are grandchildren, there are great grandchildren who are learning how to do what the people who came before them did to all make that
Right.
happen. So
Yeah.
there's a very long version of saying I kind of got put on this path to be in relationships with people and talk to them. And I realized like the past 2 years that that's where I was getting my energy from. I love being able to be the voice of people who may not have an opportunity to leave the farm or
Mhm.
go to Capitol Hill or go to their local legislator's office and do those things. And honestly, for a long time, I really struggled with why am I here and why am I doing this? Because I come from a multi-generational family farm. And kind of the
Mhm.
antithesis to that is global corporate ag corporations. They both have their purpose in the
Mhm.
world right now. But I just couldn't understand it, right? Like why of all people am I in this situation kind of being pulled into a knot, right? Kind of like you hear the old cowboys now who are like dealing with BLM and things and they're kind of like they're getting pulled in different directions in a knot.
And you're
Part
meaning Bureau of Land Management,
yes,
right?
yes, BLM,
Okay.
Bureau of Land Management. Yes, yes. Um, so I say all that to say I really sent a random message, and I do this all the time. I promise you, there are people out there who can attest to this, that they get random LinkedIn messages from me, giving them kudos and telling them like, "Hey, you're killing it. Keep doing it." And that was literally what I sent to Tiana, and she was like, "Hey," 'cause this is a really small detail, but I sent her a voice message, and she was like, "I didn't even know you could do that." She's like, "Why don't we talk and have a meeting?" And literally, the rest is history. I was fascinated by her willingness to just jump out there and do that. And she literally called me out in our meeting. You know, I'd never met her before, still haven't met her in person, but she's like, "Well, why aren't you doing that?" And I was like, "I don't have a good answer for that. So
Right.
I'm gonna do it."
And I think it's so beautiful to have people in your life who can ask you those questions, who can kind of force you out of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
Like, well, why aren't you? Why isn't this a thing? It's so clearly on your heart. You clearly have the skill set for it. Why aren't you taking it? And I mean, I had people like that in my entrepreneurship journey of like, why aren't you doing this? Because I
Mhm.
was scared, because the fear of uncertainty can keep you in a spot that's not truly authentic anymore. I think it's so helpful to have people who can push you where you need to be, and then you end up growing so much, and I love that. And having the courage to message people because, yeah, you don't know if they're gonna answer you. You don't know if they're gonna
Oh, there's been so
appreciate
many
it, but
times where I don't get a response. I'm like, "Did I say something wrong? What did I do?" But I
but
didn't.
honestly, I'm sure all those people love getting those. I
Mhm.
mean, if you put yourself in their shoes, I'm like, "Heck yeah, I want somebody to recognize that I'm being vulnerable or I'm doing these things of." Yeah, I think that's a great practice. I'm gonna try to start doing that more often.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the more it's kinda one of those things where, like, the more that I look for that, the more that I have looked for that, the more that I see it. And, like,
Mhm.
there's some people that are doing stuff that just is it is m I have no idea how they are able to do the things that they're doing, right? Like, they're putting out content, they're involved in organizations, they have kids, they're married, they have their own companies, they're on boards of other companies. I'm just like, "Whoa." Like,
Right?
I mean, if nobody's telling, and that's like what I tell them a lot of times too, is like, I don't really care if anybody's telling you this, but you need to know that like, that's pretty legit. You should be proud of that. You know, because like one of the dichotomies of leadership is if you are not making someone upset or bothering people or like, you know, ruffling feathers, like you're probably not doing your job. Like if you're running around and everybody's like, every single person is saying you're doing a great job, you should probably be like, maybe I need to stop and think about what I'm doing or have some harder conversations.
Mhm. Yeah, because then you're people pleasing instead of actually moving things forward, and
Yes.
I get into that because I'm a people pleaser. Well, a recovering one. I'm getting better.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a thing. I mean, and I was thinking about
yeah,
a minute ago, I mean, especially in today's world with algorithms and like it's so I don't even know if easy does it justice, but it's you almost kind of get put in an echo chamber, whether you want to be or not.
yeah,
Because you have to understand, like, how that's another reason why I do the things I do is to like subvert the algorithms. Like, I'll do things all the time, like just to throw them off. Because if you don't, you're just going to keep getting the same things all
yeah.
the time.
And I feel like sometimes those of us in ag get into an echo chamber
Huh?
because it's so easy to. And I do think like my experience as a journalist was kind of similar to yours in that you get to meet so many people around the country, which was amazing. And you get to see them do amazing things and you get to learn about their families and you get to learn about what keeps them going or how they got through hard times. And I think that's why I resonated so fully with your idea on this podcast because you get to know the people behind
Mhm.
the face. Because honestly, I will say this. So I grew up on a pretty small beef operation. And I will tell you, I thought feedlots were the antithesis of all that is good in agriculture. Like, I just thought they were dumb. I thought that it's not great for animal welfare. And then actually getting to visit some and talk to feedlot owners, whether it's a giant one or not, it brought back the humanity of it that I was so quick to dismiss, even within the industry. And so I think that was a really great eye opening experience of like, you know what? These people are trying to do the best they can
Right.
for these animals. They are trying to make it the best for consumers so that it is an affordable or a more affordable piece of protein, high quality protein. They are worried about animal welfare. They are worried about keeping them healthy and keeping them efficient. Like there's so much that goes into running a feedlot. It's like a giant game of chess
Yeah.
that I didn't understand just from my own operation growing up, that getting to see some of the bigger industry. So, I mean, I am not going to disparage any aspect of ag. Even like big operations right now, I feel like it's so easy to get into the situation of like, oh, big farms versus small farms. And you can only support the small farms. Of a lot of times with the way that the economy is, like you have to get bigger or your operation is not going to survive. And so you've got to diversify so you can bring that next generation back. You've got to go in to it with a different mindset so you can survive the current market conditions, because it's not like it was farming in the 80s, the 90s, before. Things keep changing and you have got to change your mindset. You've got to change your operation to keep up with the changes if you want to keep going. It was just really eye-opening getting to learn more from people, from big operations, from small operations, from feedlots, stockers, show operations, just the beef industry in itself, even within just one breed that I was in. Like it's so diverse, and that's something that I don't think is as well known. And so I love this of getting to put faces behind those in agriculture. And I love that, like, the best thing that I thought about ag communications, and I still get to do it, is that even though I'm not in production ag, I'm still getting to help those in production ag stay in business by giving them the information they need. There's so many ways to advance the industry that we love, even if we're not the ones growing the oranges, raising the cattle. It takes all of us, and it takes really different skill sets to be able to move this industry forward.
Yeah, there's so many layers. I mean, it's connected by food, of course, but I mean, there's just so much other parts of it that are interconnected.
Yeah.
I think that, that's a really good point for everybody to understand that I learned when I was on Farm Bureau and spending time on the state board, is that it sounds really good. I just want to preface this by, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is a reality of the situation. The deal is that there are great people that get elected to be the state president or serve on the state board. The rub comes when you have to spend time away from the operation. And you naturally get removed. You get removed from what got you there in the first place, which was being fully rooted in the daily issues and the things that are going on. And that's just, I don't know if that's kind of like on a tangent, but it's just kind of like another dynamic of how complex and layered everything is, because you can even have somebody who's runs a 12,000 acre row crop operation and they become VP or president or another elected position, and they naturally are now removed from the farm. What's the one thing that everybody says about politicians is the only way that you're going to get them to have an understanding is to get them on the farm? So I don't know. I just felt compelled to make that point. It's just because it's not a good or bad thing. It's just really difficult to navigate.
Yeah. And I get it. It's like maybe a chicken and egg kind of situation, because you need policies that help operations. And so you need someone to be off the farm helping shape those.
Yeah.
But then you also need it to be informed by the farm. So yeah, I get it. It's hard. And I mean, it's true of probably any industry, but yeah, it's tricky. So I appreciate people who are willing to make those sacrifices to be off the farm, to be working on that. I appreciate the people who are keeping the farm running back home. It takes everybody. It really does. And this is a big industry, and well, no, it's not. It's a small industry, but there are many parts to this.
Yeah, I think to your point earlier, what you're talking about with the different breeds and different things, is that something that came to mind, and I think it's important for people to understand also, is that's a really good example of, when you go like Seminoles or Brangus or Brahmins or whatever it is. I think about it in my head as like streets, right? Like they're all their own avenues of things. So like when you turn down that street, like you now have your own set of daily tasks, not optional to-dos, risk. And they all have their own different things. Like to your point, it's like, and they're all their own different thing. And it's like, you have to leave that, go back down the street and get back on the main highway to try to go see what everybody else is doing. And it's just like that Chris Ledoux song. You can't see them from the road, right? Like it's out there, it's happening. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't.
Right. Yeah.
And another thing too, on that same note, something that I noticed, and it's still really humbling, is when you are out and you're driving that much and you're in the deep parts of ag country and farmland, you realize like how small you are for one, and how minuscule the things you are doing, but they're all important. So it's kind of like, back to your point, like it's like this chicken and egg thing, where it doesn't seem like it's a very big deal. But if you start, it's like spokes on a wheel. If you start removing spokes, the wheel loses structural integrity and it's going to break.
And it all compounds.
Yep.
Yeah, it may feel like I'm only one person, I'm only doing these things. But if I didn't do what I was doing, then they couldn't do what they're doing, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's all pretty interconnected. And it's so amazing how small this industry can be.
Yeah.
I feel like people I met 14 years ago when I just started at Angus, like I still get to see them at cattle industry convention, or I'll see them and now they're in Farm Bureau, or now they're in National Cattlemen's Beef Association, or something like that. And it's amazing how interconnected this is. Or like somebody you met 12 years ago, you see again in a new light, but still within the industry. And it's really cool. I love that people you meet, it's not a one-time encounter kind of deal. Like you'll probably see them again, and that's pretty cool. Because I feel like ag is a people business. Like, yes, we love working the land. We love keeping our resources growing and producing food, but ag is a people business, and that's probably my favorite part about it.
I try to ask people that I respect or that that have integrity this question, because ag's no different. There are people that don't have integrity in every business. I always ask them, and I'm sure you do too, what is your favorite part about this? And everyone I've ever asked says the people, there's no hesitation. Like it's just the first thing that they say is the people. And one thing I want to share is when I was down in South Florida working for Tropicana, I know I toot this horn all the time, but multi-generational person in Florida is a very rare thing nowadays. And even for me, some people will tell you I come from the good old boy network, which isn't really true. But I was down there and I didn't know anyone, and I was just trying to make friends. And we did a lot of work with Southern Gardens, which I think was, yeah. I don't know if they still do it anymore. I think they sold it. Anyways, it was the citrus portion of U.S. Sugar, like a citrus division kind of thing. They were interconnected in some way. And the person who did all of their work that in the same vein that I was doing for them was a gentleman named Wade Timner. He was an older guy, kind of took me under his wing, but I'll never forget, there was a couple of things that he told me. Like the first time he sat me down at lunch at the log cabin in LaBelle, and for those who know, it's a good place to eat. He said, there's two things that you have to know. He said, you have to understand that there's nothing more valuable or powerful than your word. Full stop. Second, the only thing that you have and you will always have is your name. Full stop. That's that. And what you do with it, he's like, imagine it's like a backpack, and all through your career, you're just putting books in there. So do you want to keep books in there that you can go back and read that are going to be helpful? Or do you want to put stuff in there that's not going to be helpful and nobody wants to read? So I just thought that was to the people part of it. Like that's how deep it is part of the industry. I think it's really revolves around that.
Yeah. I think probably my favorite part of the people you get to meet are the ones on, so I was editing another podcast, and they were saying how they like to be on the cutting edge of technology, not the bleeding edge.
Okay.
Which I thought was a cool distinction.
Yeah.
Especially they're a seed stock operation, so they're the kind of operation that creates the genetics to create the animals that become meat. So the technology use that they're using, and the ones that are like not scared to try new things, I think maybe those have always been my favorite people. Like they are rooted in tradition, but they're not held back by tradition, if that makes sense.
100%.
And so like they're using embryo transfer, they're using IVF, they're using all sorts of cool stuff that moves the industry forward. And so, like, that juxtaposition of integrity, moral compass, like those traditional values, maybe,
Yep.
but then marrying that with being progressive, trying new things, not being afraid of, well, we haven't done it this way, but let's try it. This could this could be a game changer. And a lot of times it is. And meeting those kind of people and getting their takes on things, definitely my favorite part of the ag industry.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that. It's a fine line. To your point about what they said, I think there's a very fine line between. You kind of have to kind of stagger your way along.
Hmm. Yeah.
This ties into that, and I'll share the story. So when I was down there also in South Florida, I won't share the family's name, but it's a very old, very well put together, large landowner family. And I was in one of their groves, and I ran into the grove manager, and I'm always obsessed with this kind of stuff, right? Like I want to know, like, how are they 9 generations into this thing and they're still a force? Like they're
Hmm.
still a force to be reckoned with. They're still growing. They're still getting better. Like, how is that even possible? So I asked her, and she shared with me that when the next generation is coming on board, they have to, get their high school diploma. They don't necessarily have to go to college. It's going to help them,
Hmm.
but they have to spend at least 1 year in each sector of their business. 1 year in real estate, 1 year in farming, 1 year in timber, 1 year in oil and gas, 1 year in accounting. And they have to, like, it takes them like 7 years to get through this, right? And
Hmm.
then if they're still interested in it, they have to take a seat on the board, and then they have to, this is a probationary period, which I think is like 3 years. So the idea is like they're a decade into it by the time they get to the point where it's
Yeah.
like the family looks at them and is like, okay, do you want to be a part of this?
Hmm.
And what I thought was really cool about that, before I even knew that, that family was one of the most progressive. They were doing things that you like, they have a spray board, or, a board where you pull up on the property and it tells you everything that's going on in these different places. So, where the reentry points are or where they've been spraying or whatnot. And sometimes I'd pull up there and be like, that's the crazy. Why would they even try that? But it like they were fully committed. And I mean, it's the proof is in the fruit.
Yeah.
They're still doing, sorry. I mean, no pun intended.
No, I get it. Because, yeah, there was a family that I got to interview, and very similar. Like, it's a family of 9 siblings that have all come back together. And now, like, the third and fourth generation are
Hmm.
coming back. But one of their rules is that, okay, you go to college or you finish your education, then you have to work somewhere else for 4 years. So you get leadership styles, you get other aspects of the industry, you get exposure to that. And so you come back with a more well rounded experience of, hey, these things are actually affecting this from the outside. Like one of them, he ended up working for a beef breed association. So you learn the policy side of things, you learn so many different avenues. And so when you come back to the operation, you've got this external
Hmm.
information to help make those decisions because you do know more about what's affecting the industry. I mean, their operation has to be huge to be able to handle
Hmm.
that many family members, but it's successful and they are still growing and it's working. And so I love that idea of being exposed to new situations, to new information, to new perspectives. That's how you keep moving your operation forward. And I think it's great.
Yeah, I think something that doesn't get talked about is the perspective of that. Something that's a really deep part of it is that whether the people realize it or not, it helps the younger generation have an understanding of the value of what that is.
Mm,
Right. So, like,
yeah.
they understand from top to bottom, every part of this is important. I think one of the best things you can do is travel, see the world, and meet new people.
Yeah. Hmm.
Otherwise, if you I think a lot of people can relate to this, whether you're from a kind of small town or a no stoplight town. If you stay there, your perspective is going to be extremely skewed,
Absolutely.
and it doesn't what you don't have any perspective of how valuable what you have is, and therefore you don't really care for it the way you should. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I left my small town because I didn't feel like I fit in, which is fine. If I went back now, I'm a completely different person than probably what I was at 18. But like, I needed outside perspectives. I needed to go see more of the world. And I totally agree. And I mean, the internet helps with that
For sure.
completely. Like I got to interview a family in South Dakota last October. It takes, 40 minutes to get to town, but like they can keep up with everything because of the internet. And
Mhm.
so it does help connect you in a lot of ways, and they can learn about new things and all of that, even if you are pretty remote. But there is definitely something to be said to actually traveling, actually experiencing other things within the industry or not. And I think it totally helps keep things moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, I wish that we could keep going on this episode, but I think we should close it there. I've got a jet plane to catch here soon.
Yeah. You're leaving to go experience new things. So
Yeah, yeah.
perfect. Perfect segue.
I think the high is 43, so I'm not down with that.
Oof. Thanks. You
Yeah.
need a wild rag. It does keep you here nice and warm.
I might just get like a Elmer Fudd hunting cap and put that on.
Heck yeah. I've got some buddies from Montana who swear by those. I'm like, if it
Hey.
works in Montana, I believe it.
We had 8 inches of snow here last year and they work. I didn't think I'd
Oswald,
ever say
thanks so
that.
much for letting me be on the mic on this side of the podcast, because I definitely feel passionate about your podcast, your message, your priorities. I really love getting to be part of this project, but thank you for letting me share my perspective and background as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think we should try to do this. I don't know, maybe a few times a year, because it's really good conversation, good perspective, and I think it gives people an insight into what's really driving this whole train. Let's it kind of I think it kind of reinforces what we're doing, right? It lets people know that we're just people.
Yeah, we're humans.
Right.
I
That's
love
great.
it.
All right. Well, thank you, Kasey. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Thank you, and have a great trip.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Thanks for connecting our fields to your forks with us today on Farmstrong. Every day is your God-given opportunity to change the world. So be the change that you want to see in the world. Share your questions and guest suggestions at farmstrongpodcast@gmail.com. Special thank you to Kasey Brown of Teal Hat Communications for producing this podcast. More importantly, thank you for investing your time in this podcast and taking the time to connect to your agricultural industry. This is the Farmstrong Podcast. Work hard, be honest, speak proudly.